Hey guys, it's Abby and I'm doing a long overdue wrap up today with a lot of books, 24. How many? Don't fall, please don't fall, pretty please. I haven't done a wrap up in a while, refer to my thesis video to see why, but for a very short one, if you can't be bothered to watch the video, I did a master's. If you even like vaguely looked into that, you understand. So yeah, I have not been wrapping up, but I did read a little bit. Not a lot, but a little. So let's get into that. So in March, the first book I finished was First Among Sequels by Jasper Fforde. I was listening to it for a while. I always enjoy these. I cannot remember what rating I gave it, but it was fun. It was at least 3. Then I read Spare and Found Parts by Sarah Maria Griffin. Gave this 5 stars. This book is in a post-dystopian. So like the disaster's already happened and these people are recovering from it. Technology is like evil in this world and Nell wants to make something with technology, and so she builds a person. It's all about like the city getting like freaked out by it and being scared by what she's doing, and controversy with her family, with her dad and friends, and yeah, it's an amazing book written by an amazing woman. Definitely recommend checking this one out, and it's gorgeous. Then another amazing book which I was sent by Titan Books, thank you very much, for an honest review, but oh my god, it's amazing. I promise it's an honest review. It's The Devouring Great by Christine Lynn Herman. This amazing book, oh my god. So I read it a while ago. I read it in March. It's months ago. So this book follows a girl who moves back to her mum's old town. I can't remember why she moved there, but it's in like rural New York State, and it's the town that her mother grew up in. And weird things happen in this town, and everyone kind of has like a weird feeling about them being there. Her new neighbours treat her with distant respect, and this has got a very big supernatural speculative twist. Like, it twists about there and then stays twisted. But it is kind of contemporary as well. It's so interesting, so in depth. I was so sucked in and just obsessed, and I'm pretty sure that this is going to be a series, and I'm ridiculously excited for the second one. It's just so good. It's a YA, follows teenagers. Nell was also YA, she's a teenager. Oh my god, it's so good. The last book I read in March was Mitch Albom's The Timekeeper. This follows a man who invents marking down the passing of time. He invents kind of monitoring time. This is a really interesting look at the concept of being so concerned about being places on time, doing things in time, having done things by a certain point in your life, and it's a really interesting take on that, so I really enjoyed this one. Then the books I read in April. So first up we have 5 Good on the Property Ladder by Bruno Vincent. This one is about them trying to buy a house and realising that like, not in this economy. They are parodies, 1 of the series itself and 2 of current day living. They're a lot of fun. oh, you can't see them. I am slowly collecting them all. Then I read Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. I really enjoyed this. It was so much fun. I love this series. It's a utopian society, but people still die because they need to control the population. No one dies anymore because they've eliminated all these problems, aging, illnesses, all that, but people keep still giving birth and they can't support a constantly growing population with no decrease. So scythes are there to cull the population and to get rid of some people, and they have certain amounts of numbers that they have to do, but despite this being an apparent utopia, it ain't. And the Thunderhead is the computer that controls the world, but it doesn't control this kind of culling of the people to keep the population down, because it believes that a computer shouldn't interfere in such a human aspect of life. Computers never die, humans did die before they did all this. So it controls everything else, but it cannot interfere with the scythes. This is the sequel. It follows further on from the first book. Not going to say what it is in case you've not read it. Then I read, I've got a list if you're wondering what I keep looking at. Then I read Illuminae by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I keep almost saying their names backwards, saying J. Kaufman and Amy Kristoff. Why? I don't know. Everyone's been telling me to read this book. It took me forever to get to this book. It's the one with all the cool stuff inside of it. I loved it so much. It's such a dense read, and I loved being in this different world. It did take me a little bit to get into it, but then once I was in, I was in. 2 big corporations are fighting over a small planet with some resources on, so they have to kind of try and evacuate the people on it, whilst some of these people are wanting to kill the people that are on the planet because they are evidence of their crime, and this is them trying to survive. That's that. Then I read The Red Pyramid by Rick Riordan. This is my first ever Rick Riordan. This is ancient Egyptian mythology, which is something that I love. I love ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, and World War II are my history genres. I love a lot of other history genres, but like those are my three. And I really enjoyed this. It taught me a lot more because I don't actually read a lot about ancient Egypt. I just think it's cool. So it kind of reminded me and taught me a lot about different mythologies. It's from two different points of view. It's from a brother and a sister, and their dad is missing, and it's them doing stuff. Then I read A Court of Thorny Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Finally! I've had this on my TBR for a while. I just picked it up because of the hype. I am not a romance sort of person, but I enjoy it when I do read it. I thought I was going to hate this book. It's so cheesy, it's so obvious kind of how the story's going to go, but I still enjoyed it, which I wasn't expecting. As a standalone, this was really fun. It's like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Our main character, does it say what it is? F-E-Y-R-E, Feyre, is captured in this castle and then has to fall in love with the guy. But it adds a few more twists of like, there's a whole culture around him. He's not just a beast, there's like a whole culture around his people. The Empathy Problem by Gavin Extance. This follows a man who gets a brain tumour and then starts to have empathy. So he's working for a banking corporation, scamming people, getting rich, and then suddenly he starts to feel empathy from this tumour that's in his head, and it's about his kind of evolution and coming to be a better person. It's really interesting. He starts out as a giant douchebag, and by the end you're like, ah, you kind of learnt your lesson. Shit, dude. So this is really interesting. I got it purely for the cover. I love Gavin Extance's writing. I bought his books because the covers were beautiful. It was a complete cover buy, and I love this and The Universe vs. Alex Wood. They're so good. So good. Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli. I needed an ebook to read on the train down from here to my old flat, which takes like 8 hours. It's like a whole day trip. So I read Stargirl because I watch a lot of Kayla from Books and Lala, and it was her favourite childhood book, so I wanted to read it. It was good. It would have been better if I'd read it when I was in the age range. It was an interesting little story, and I did like that it all turned out well in the end, and it was surprisingly hard-hitting for what it was. So it follows, so what it's about, Abby. It follows a young girl who is very different from the rest of her classmates, and she doesn't care that she stands out and that she's odd and that she's weird. People slowly come round to Stargirl's ways and start doing things like she does because they think it's cool, and then things kind of go slightly pear-shaped, and it's about friendship. The last book I read in April is The Complete Mouse by Art Spielman? Not sure. It's a graphic novel of the man interviewing his own father, who was, well, yeah. I'm not sure what tense to use. Like, I'm going to use the wrong tense and then you'll understand. He was a Jew during World War II. Like, he's still a Jew after World War II. But, like, this now tells you. And he was in the concentration camps. And it's about him interviewing his dad, trying to find out about his life, trying to find out how, like, why he is how he is. A lot of children of survivors of the Holocaust have said that it's massively impacted how they were raised, because it's massively impacted their parents' lives. So this was a look into both sides of that. It's both Art's own thoughts and his own life experiences, but also it's what his dad said to him. It's really interesting, really hard-hitting, if you like World War II. I read one book in May, and that was Who is MarySue by Sophie Collins. This is a poetry collection, trying too hard with a woman and not making them realistic, trying to make them perfect. Women aren't perfect. This was an interesting read. I had thought that I really liked poetry. I did when I was a kid. I loved it when I was younger. And I read this and another book that's on the next month, and they were good, but I don't think I love poetry anymore, which is kind of sad. Then we have the June books. So I read The Doll Factory. I cannot remember who it was by, I'm sorry. Here's the cover. I got it as an ARC on NetGalley. I really enjoyed this. It's a historical fiction. It follows a girl with, I think, scoliosis, some sort of spinal problem, and the men that she interacts with in this period in, I think, the 1800s. It's like a Victorian era, because the Great Exhibition is on, and it is kind of like a thriller mystery mixed in with a historical fiction, and it's really interesting. I loved all of the different sections of the world and the different deep dives, the detail and the intricacy put into the different art forms presented within the book was so good. I think it's Elizabeth McNeil. That's just popped into my head. Yeah. But yes, I really enjoyed this book, and if I ever see a physical copy in a charity shop, second-hand shop, thrift store, op shop, whatever you call it, wherever you're from, I'm gonna pick it up. And then leaning over, because this is the last book that I read in June, and that is Sunshine by Melissa Lee Horton. Horton. Poetry again, this is the other poetry book I mentioned, so I did like it, but not hugely. Mental health. This one is messed up. This is a messed up poetry book, like, it's so cute, and that's why she labelled it Sunshine. But she writes about some weird ass shit, and also like really bad mental states, and it was very interesting to read. Not fun, but interesting. So if you like poetry, maybe have a look into this one. But a lot of the reviews are like, oh my god, this is like disgusting, like it's the point of it. So then we have the books from July, and that is the last month for this wrap up, because I didn't read a single book in August, and I read like some chapters of a book that I finished this month, which is October. Please say I put this out at least at the beginning of November. But I want to do a separate October wrap up because it's not the end of the month yet. I probably won't finish any more books because they're big, the ones I'm reading. But I want to have October be its own wrap up. July is the last month that I read, which is mad. But I read a lot, so, like, pretty decent. So, starting with Grimm's and Andersen's fairy tales. So the fairy tales from Hans Christian Andersen and the Brothers Grimm. This obviously doesn't have all of them, but I found it really interesting. I think I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't as dark as I was kind of hoping it was. Like, I know they're for kids, but also there were a lot of complaints about how dark it was. I was hoping it was going to be a lot darker. It wasn't, but still interesting to see the like origins of a lot of stories that are prevalent in society, because these guys were German and Dutch. So European, it's spread around Western culture, which is my culture. So, Poirot Investigates, the third Poirot book from Agatha Christie. This one is a variety of short stories, so I'm not going to say anything because it's short stories. I liked it. Then The Big Four by Agatha Christie. This one I enjoyed. It's about a big crime syndicate that Poirot tries to shut down. Dry by Neil Shusterman and Jared Shusterman, his son. It's in California. All the water runs dry. They completely run out. This I only gave 4 stars rather than 5. I normally adore Neil Shusterman's writing so much. Did not adore this one. The middle chunk for me was very slow, and I really struggled to get through it. And I just kind of had to force myself to read a chapter a day, and then I was back into it and like binging it. I might have to reread this at some point because it might have been my mental state. I was stressed. I need to reread this one at some point, but it's a really interesting look into the reality of how humanity probably would react to a lack of water. This was an interesting look into that. The Mystery of the Blue Train, again another Agatha Christie Poirot book. This one is about a woman who was murdered on the train, and there doesn't seem to be anyone who got on or off the train at any point. So, and like, it must then be one of the passengers, but none of the passengers went into her carriage that people saw. It was good. Then Peril at End House. This is about a young woman who thinks that she's just had a variety of accidents happening, and no one believes her about these accidents. But Poirot is concerned because a lot of these accidents would have been deadly if they'd occurred, and he starts to investigate. Then I finally read Stardust by Neil Gaiman. So many of you guys told me to read this. I had started a few pages and I wasn't that into it. I was kind of like, eh. But then I forced myself to carry on through it. I had already seen the film. That helped me a little, actually, in getting through the beginning bits that I wasn't enjoying. Because I could envision the movie in my mind, and I kind of knew what was coming, so I was like, okay, I enjoy the movie. Just keep reading. I've liked Neil Gaiman's writing style before. I adored this. At the time, I gave it 4.5 stars. I needed to let it sit a bit because I now give it 5 stars. It's an amazing read. It's a nice, short, quick book. It might take you a little bit to get into if you're like me, but it's like 200 pages, and it's so much fun, and I think that the movie did a good adaptation. Really enjoyed it. 5 stars. So good. Then we've got the ABC Murders, another Poirot mystery. This goes alphabetically, so it's in a town beginning with A, and a person with their name, AA. So if it was me with a different last name, because my last name does not begin with A, it would be Abby Andrews in Annick. and then Betty Boop in Birmingham, and then Charlie Chester in Chippenham, and so on. Really interesting concept. Really like this one. I knew I was going to like it the second that I saw the cover, and then that I like read the concept of it. It was really good. Really, really good. And then finally, my last book, The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. This is fiction, but like it heavily pulls from reality. The one major difference from reality is the Underground Railroad is the name that people gave to the system that got enslaved people out from slavery in mainly the south of the US and brought them to the north. There wasn't an actual railroad, it was just people taking people, and it got nicknamed that. This takes it a step further and actually builds an underground railroad across the US to save these enslaved black people. This is a hard-hitting book. Really hard-hitting, because, I mean, if you know anything, like, the US slavery was atrocious. It went on for so long, and the way that these people were treated. I mean, Britain has done its fair share of shit things, like, oh my god, if I go through the history of the British Empire, one, we'd be here for 700 years, and two, my country has done some very bad things. Very, very bad. Just so that you don't think I'm, like, hating on the US and being like, oh my god, as I do an American accent. But being truthful, the treatment of black people in the US nowadays is atrocious. The treatment of black people in the US back then was even fucking worse, if that's even possible. Which it is, because it was atrocious. It was these people were treated like animals. And this goes through them trying to retain their culture, trying to retain their communities, and also trying to live life normally whilst enslaved. And also them escaping. And it goes through the problems that people had when escaping. You get to the north, and at least over here in the UK, we're kind of taught like, yeah, they got to the north. I mean, we're barely taught about it anyway, but we're taught, yeah, they got to the north, it's all good. The north isn't like a slave place, they're fine. But the north is still racist. It's just not enslaving as many people. It's still massively racist. So this also covers the problems that people would have had once they got to this place and they were no longer slaves, although still having like a bounty on their head for their return. And it covers the problems with this, and it's such a hard-hitting book. I read it all in pretty much one sitting. This is amazing. 5 stars. I'm not going to say that I enjoyed it, because I didn't, but learning more about, because Colson Whitehead is a black man, and 99.9% sure he's American, and learning about this is incredibly important for every Western English speaking person. I don't know. But it's just really important to know the history of the places that we've been. It's a tough book. It's not fun, but it's important. And I think you should read it, especially if you like learning new things, and if you like... I enjoy books that make me sad, if that makes sense. Like, I knew I was going to enjoy this, even though I knew it was going to make me sad, because I like informing myself, I think. Yeah. So, that was the last of the 24 books. Ended on a bit of a sad note. This was a very large book haul. I am not leaving it this bad again. So this was my giant haul. I am not holding those books up again. I did it at the beginning for the thumbnail. I don't even know if it worked. So I'm finally up to date. I'll have to record October soon. But I am finally up to date with my reading wrap-ups. Woo! Did it! Woo! So yes, I'm finally up to date, finally done them all. Very glad. Time to put the books back. My Instagram, my Twitter, my book blog, my Goodreads and my Amazon wishlist. And if you want to see some more from me, click the red subscribe button and the little bell, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye!